Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. Have to say, this could be, other than the Major League All-Star break, when there's nothing else going on in sports, could be the worst time of the year. Because sporting-wise, not on top of that, the weather's terrible. It's
not here. Actually, it's getting to be better. 40s and sunny.
Well, today it's 40s here, but it's been like single digits or in the teens.
Mm-hmm.
And we had some, not significant, but decent amount of snow on the weekend. But that in between the AFC NFC Championship and the Super Bowl, the 2 weeks, which is too long. I think it should be a week. But you have the NHL All-Star Game, which I've made my opinions clearly known. And you have the NFL Pro Bowl, which could be the worst of the.
Yeah, it's touch football. I don't watch it.
Yeah, and I heard something. I heard something yesterday about them doing something with something in substitute for an onside kick, that after a touchdown, if you get, they put the ball on the 25-yard line. If you gain 15 yards, you get the possession of the ball. I mean, it's some completely stupid, silly thing. So anyway, we're going to have Kevin Allen on the show. Should be joining us. They should be joining us any minute now. Russ, start us off with the pre-show.
So it's interesting how the Mets came about their new manager. A lot of people had been pushing for Luis Rojas to get the job before Carlos Beltran, and somehow Carlos Beltran, being a former successful player, partially with the Mets, mostly elsewhere, but he had some good seasons with the Mets, had charmed them into the job, even though he had no coaching experience, where Rojas is loaded with coaching experience. He's been coaching in the Mets organization all the way up. And the difference in the player reaction is remarkable, because you didn't hear much from the Beltran crowd other than Robinson Cano piping in, right? But otherwise, you heard nothing.
Right.
Now you're hearing from Noah Syndergaard, Jeff McNeil, all the young guys that played or had interaction with them, and that means a lot more. And this isn't a Stump Merrill situation. He's not like he's 65 years old and had never gotten a chance. He just hasn't gotten a chance yet. And when you have a lot of young, impressionable players like the Mets do, but are on the cusp of possibly being a winning team, this is actually the better selection. And the only reason they made this selection is because they had to get rid of the first guy. And it's in typical Mets fashion. Yeah. They almost never make the right first decisions on things, but a lot of times things do fall in their lap. And this
I saw the reaction. Kevin, we're talking about the Mets hiring Luis Rojas as their new manager after Carlos Beltran had to resign because of his connection to the Astros cheating scandal. The funny thing, I heard Pete Alonso and Marcus Stroman, who's never shy about going on Twitter, giving the thumbs up on this, and they got in it with Chris Carlin from ESPN because I guess he had some fault or some problem. I don't know. I couldn't get the lowdown on what the whole back and forth was about. But I guess Stroman then made some comment about Chris Carlin's weight, and then everything was on. So it's Marcus Stroman should delete his Twitter account. He gets
he's fine. I'll tell you what the positive of this is. And then I'll pass it to Kevin if he wants to comment. The positive is, and Mike, you pointed this out to me, that Rojas is brother of Moises Alou and father is Felipe, and he doesn't have the Alou name because apparently that name, they changed it when they came here, but Rojas was the family name. But Kev, the fact that he could call Felipe Alou every once in a while if he's in a jam, that's pretty good.
That's real good, actually. The interesting thing about Beltran losing his job is he's really the only player that kind of suffered by this. And the thought occurred to me, and hey, look, I'm a kind of a union guy. I support the idea that you want to have a strong players union, but you really can't do anything to a player. This year, for example, we've seen a coach in Dallas lose his job over conduct unbecoming, and whatever he did, and I'm not sure what he did. If a player did that, he wouldn't have lost his job.
Right.
But a coach did because he represents the team. And here you have, players knew about what was going on in the sign stealing, and there's no punishment for them because of the strength of their union, the CBA. There's protocol for these kind of things, and the protocol says no, you can't remove them from their employment. So it really shows some of the events we've had, the strength of the union, the fact that you can, and we see it every time there's the fine as well in the NHL, because it's just a kick in the, just a kick. It's a small fine. John Tortorella was 25 grand when he, and players are next to nothing because that's the way it is in the CBA.
Well, Kev, let me just ask you this question because we want to get to hockey, but we had to bring it up because we talked about it yesterday. One vote against Derek Jeter from being unanimous. Now, this is the problem I had, and you know it because of your involvement and our involvement in the PHWA, that a couple years ago we voted on transparency in terms of our votes. I like that. I think if you vote for somebody, you should be prepared to explain it and back it up. This person may never be known. Apparently, it's at this point it's voluntary whether their vote is exposed. In a couple weeks, they'll all be revealed, that signed off on them being revealed. And if the person doesn't want to come out and say why they voted against Jeter, they will never be revealed. In a way, this person had to know that this was going to be controversial, and if they don't have the guts to come out and say why they voted against Jeter, I think they're a little bit cowardly. I really do.
Yeah, I dealt with this issue for a while, and what we saw in the Writers Association is when we first brought it to it being transparency, brought it to a vote, there was very little support for it.
I remember.
Yeah, but as time wore on, it became increasing amount of support for it. And
welcome Twitter and everything. I mean, look at all.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what happens. But here's my thought on it. I don't care what you do to voting, you're going to have these kind of episodes.
Sure.
You could say we're going to throw that guy out. We're going to do this. We're going to do that, and it won't change a thing. There'll always be somebody who wants to stand out or wants to make a political statement or has a grudge against the player for whatever reason. When you have a voting process, you're susceptible to, protest votes, guys that think they're funny, everything imaginable. And there's nothing you can do about it. And it's too bad because there are two levels of Hall of Fame selection. Yeah. There's getting in the hall, which we all know, and then there's unanimous selections, which everybody keeps track of and kind of knows what's going on. And if anyone ever deserved to go in first ballot, blah blah blah, it is our man Derek Jeter, who for his leadership, for I just saw today, and a guy was just talking about the thing he remembers most about being on a team with him was how hard he worked. It says literally like how hard he worked. Sweat. He said, I always think after every practice, I remember how, Jeter would just sweat and sweat and sweat just because he'd work so hard.
My grandmother would say that there's always one schmuck.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That's well put, actually.
No,
and I don't care what you do.
And
possible.
Russ mentioned it as a possibility that his stewardship over the Miami Marlins and the negative appearance of that, we don't know who this voter is, but it could be a Miami Marlins beat reporter who thinks that's his protest vote, but we'll never know what it is unless we know who that writer is. And I'm not saying we should destroy that writer. I'd like to hear their explanation.
No, but that's why we do want to know.
Right.
We say it's not because we want to destroy them. Yeah, it is. That's what transparency is.
That's the only reason we want to know.
Yeah, we want it's an accountability, and accountability is we need to destroy them.
I mean, not to make it political, but
that's that's just the way it is. That's the accountability game.
That is
when people are being insincere and saying, it's not that we want to destroy them. Yeah, we do. That's why we want to know.
I do because
There you go.
Well, everybody does. I mean, that's why you want to know. You want to be able to point your finger
And
at
the
them.
funny thing about that, Kevin, is like the thing that I was raised on and I was taught when I went to school for journalism, at the great Temple University and interned with the great Al Morgani at the Philadelphia Inquirer was, we're not supposed to be the story, right? So journalists are not supposed to be the story. And yet this does make journalists the story by making it, by putting it out there, who votes for who, we become the story.
Yeah. And, to be honest, like I really don't have any problem with it. I mean, once we know who it is, I think it's fair game. You write columns about it. And to be honest, the person may be looking for that, may be looking for attention. We don't really know, but like it's just a sad situation that people can't, sort of recognize that, I think Jeter deserved, getting in first ballot, everybody aboard,
He did, no question about it.
So,
all right, let's get going here. Imagine what the impeachment thing would be like if votes were anonymous. Think about that. Anyway, not to be political, but I was thinking about that the other day. My son brought that up.
God forbid not to be political.
No, but I'm not saying one side or the other. But how would people vote how would people on there be voting if they could?
he'd be out of office.
I know. I think so.
So
all right, let's move on. Hello, Hockey World. It is Thursday. It's only Thursday. Has this week been like 20 days long? Hello, Hockey World. It is Thursday, January 23rd, 2020. Thanks, Russ.
I'm Michael Agello, and I'm getting at a calendar.
I have a calendar.
I'm Russ Cohen, and I just laugh. I'm immature. It's all right.
I'm Kevin Allen, and I got a beef to start the show with.
All right, okay, go for it. I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday in the afternoons at some point to fill you in on the hockey comings and goings in the hockey world and other things. And we talk a little too much baseball, which I do agree. But Kevin, we are always willing to start with a beef. Go for it.
Yeah, I have a beef. I mean, I had a conversation with a good hockey person who was complaining. It started out with a complaint about the outdoor games. And you know how I feel about those.
Yeah, we love it.
That we started out there, that they've outlived their usefulness, that they've become boring. Nobody wants to deal with them anymore. And I said, that's just an absolute lie. And then it morphed into the All-Star games. Mm-hmm. And finally, at the end, I said to this person, what you're saying is you don't like them. But you know what? We're not holding those games for you.
Right.
We're holding those outdoor games for the people in the city where they're held. And we hold All-Star games because in the cities that have them, they're thrilled to have them. It's a celebration of the game. It's like the annual NHL convention.
Yeah. I walked among the crowd, Kev, in Dallas. There was over 85,000 people there.
Yeah.
You'll
never forget it. Like if you go to one of these games, and you're a hockey fan, you will never forget that you went to this game.
I don't understand why, writers are the most guilty about this because they've lost some of their luster, and this is true on television. Now we're only interested on TV when it's snowing, but they have lost some luster on television. There's no doubt about it.
Well,
but in the city, as Russ pointed out, there's genuine excitement to have these games there. Especially if they haven't had an outdoor game before. And, people are really getting into them. And the same is true of the All-Star game. Like, I get it. Yeah, nobody thinks they're real competition, but yeah, it's a major event for the league. Everybody in that city is excited about it. There's always a high percentage of kids in the audience. Yeah. They're excited to be. Yeah. It feels like you're closer to the players than you are when you go to a regular game. They're running around without they're not going 30 miles an hour, so you can sort of see their faces. And I just don't get why people now just constantly grouse about, the unique aspects of the game.
Well, I'm glad that Russ has written a book about an event that is completely meaningless in the Winter Classic. I'm
updating it this year, but
yeah. Well, there you go. But this is the thing. I have no problem with the Winter Classic, and I realize that in terms of it being obviously being a spectacle, it's profitable for the NHL. So they're not going to stop it. I was at the Centennial Classic with the Leafs and the Wings a few years ago. That was a great event. It was a pretty good game too. It came off well. I don't think I have a problem. You know this, Kevin, because I've bloviated about it for over a year. I don't like the All-Star game, but the All-Star game's not for me. I exchanged messages with a well-known columnist, NHL columnist, who, when the news came out about the All-Star game being in Florida next year, he said, I'm glad it's going to be in Florida. And I says, yeah, you're going to go for everything other than the All-Star game. And he's like, correct. Yeah, of course he is, because it's going to be nice weather there. And then, he can go there and enjoy the, all the parties and the things like that. But the game is just, it's just not, maybe it's not for me. I don't think it's for many people who are really into hockey, because it's not hockey. It's shinny. It's just.
I do want to give you one thing, though, about this year's game. The 3-on-3 women's game will draw big numbers.
Sure.
And it maybe not for you or anybody who doesn't care about women's hockey, but if they do, they could draw in a lot of female fans just from this year's game.
Now, the way they're doing 3-on-3 game, right? The women's game, right? That is just explain to me that a little bit, because
it's just the national teams, so it's not either league. So neither of the professional leagues have any players in it. It's just players for the U.S. and Canada national team.
Okay. Does anybody else think, and I'm going to throw this out there for fun, that each divisional All-Star team should have a woman on it?
They don't want to put the women and the men on.
I mean, there's no hitting in this game. There's no. I mean,
I think that the fan base would like that, but I don't know why the women would want to do that. They're trying to grow their own game. They don't want to play in the men's league. They want to have their own game, and they're trying to sell that. If I was a woman, I'd say no. I wouldn't want to be involved.
Just throwing it out there.
And I have to say, the most memorable thing, I don't remember anything about the All-Star game last year except for Kendall Coyne Schofield skating almost as fast as the fastest guy. That's the only thing I remember.
So can I tell you something? Because I had seen her before live, before that game started, I had to sift through all the garbage, and I said she is one of the fastest players there, period.
Yeah. I remember.
And people were probably just like, no. They probably wanted the guys to just blow her off the map, and it didn't happen. And that led to this. And again, I think people, and it's a shame, because I think it's going to take now this 3-on-3 for people to see how good of athletes the women are.
Right.
Well, they definitely have come a long way. I remember covering the World Championships in Kitchener, Ontario in the early 90s, and the women's game was really, really in its infancy. Like, we still talk about how, the women's game is still, based on how long men have been playing it, it's still a very young women's hockey. But back then it was really in its infancy, and the level there, there were women who were when they would pivot, they'd fall down. And I remember the Chinese team was there, and we saw that, with them. Well, now, you watch them play, the transition is just super fast. Like, they really move the puck. They all control the puck extremely well. And just as the skill level in the NHL has grown exponentially over the last decade, so is the women's game. In fact, maybe
I want to mention some of them. So on the Canadian side, Megan Acosta, Marie-Philippe Poulin, Natalie Spooner. I've seen them all live. They're amazing.
Yeah.
On the American side, you have Amanda Kessel, you have Hillary Knight, you have Kendall Coyne Schofield, Alex Carpenter, Casey Bellamy. I've seen all of them live. I mean, this is going to be a good game. This will be a very competitive game. It'll be a high-scoring game, though.
So at least there's one Kessel at the All-Star game.
It's all skaters, that you mentioned.
It'll be fast. I mean, don't you kind of wish that there was just like a flat-out U.S. versus Canada game, for fun? I mean, just because, the girls play they're so competitive, and there's such a hatred between them.
Well, that is a U.S.-Canada game.
Yeah, but just 5-on-5, like a straight out.
Oh, I see.
Oh, no. I like this. This is just part of the.
I think this will highlight their skills better.
Wide open.
Yeah,
and it'll be speed. I think it'll be great.
Okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking. I mean, I think it's great. I'm a huge fan of women's hockey, of women's sports in general. So,
But just to summarize too, like I just think that everybody needs to sort of back off and stop looking at the All-Star game as if it's ever going to be competition.
Right,
It's the annual NHL convention.
yeah, just exactly. And just
Everyone gathers and talks about the rules. Like, what I liked as a writer is that it's a mid-season time where you got a lot of athletes where you can talk to them about the issues of the game. I'm sure we'll be talking to them about CBAs, and I shouldn't say we, because I'm going to miss for the first time since 1986. But reporters will be talking to them about the issues of the game, CBA, what they think about the way the rules are going on, probably about whether their coaches, they think their treatment by the coaches, what that's all about. So there'll be all sorts of stories that will evolve out of that, and everyone will kind of get together and celebrate, the sport. And then they'll have some showy game 3-on-3 that Mike will forget by next year.
It'll be over by then. I want to present this to you folks. So this picture is I found, which is really very cool. That would be Keith Tkachuk, and up on the bleachers there, up sitting on the benches there, that'd be Matthew and Brady Tkachuk in an All-Star game.
Yeah, and if you look closer, you see Matthew with a stick slashing the back of Joe Sakic's ankle.
Right. Well, there you have it. Right.
Just kidding.
So I know. I think this is a very cool picture. I thought
it is
a really cool thing. It's just, and now
that was at the Minnesota All-Star game. I was there. I actually still have one of those jerseys. I'm surprised they got the Tkachuks to sit that quiet. I'm sure that only lasted a second.
Yeah, I'm sure that was just for a second. But this brings up another point that, we found out today that Austin Matthews will not be playing in the All-Star game. And instead, but will be going to the All-Star game. So let's give him some credit for that, because we talked about that today.
Yeah, and this was documented a few weeks ago. Chris Johnston reported that Matthews was dealing with a lingering minor injury.
Right.
And they let's see, sorry, we had Jan Levine joining us. That Matthews was dealing with a lingering minor injury. They didn't specify what, and now it's come out that it's a wrist injury, and it's something that obviously with repetitive motion, he keeps re-injuring it or whatever. So the opportunity to have a 7 or 8 day break to give him a little time to recuperate. This is not a Panarin or an Ovechkin thing where they're going to get suspended for a game. He's going to St. Louis. He's doing all the PR stuff, so he's going to be able to play. He's going to be able to play when the Leafs start their second half.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I mean, I have no problem with this. I mentioned yesterday a huge problem with players who just aren't going, or have fake injuries or whatever, because we've seen this happen. And what Matthews is doing here is following in the tradition of Crosby, who when Crosby was hurt, he would still go to the All-Star game. He'd still be there. Mm-hmm. And like Kevin said, this is a conference for everybody. You would see Crosby all the time. The NHL would be shuffling him to some suite somewhere to say hi to the people at Honda or whatever. This is what they're doing. I mean, this is what's happening there. So, that's Austin Matthews will be saying hello to all those folks too.
Here's the problem I have with this, and really, there's my beef really isn't legitimate, because I know why the league has to do it. They've got to have a blanket policy to cover everything. Yeah. No extenuating circumstances. So Ovechkin has to be suspended. I get that, but he doesn't deserve to be suspended.
Right.
Because Alex Ovechkin has shown up many, 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 many times. He's done just as you said. He's gone and shook the hands of the Honda dealers and done his bit and shown up and had fun. If you remember, he'd put on his glasses and he had that skit with Malkin, and he's really hammed it up to playing the All-Star game. And now he's a veteran player, and he needs his rest. He's trying to chase down Gretzky's record, and he can use these 3 days off. Like it makes perfect sense. There's logic to it, but because it would be hard to take all this look at each circumstances differently. They just got to suspend him. So I do understand it from both perspectives. I think Ovechkin has earned the right not to go.
Jan, I guess I'm mistaken because I didn't hear of any Panarin injury, but apparently he suffered an upper body.
I was about to correct you.
Okay.
He missed the last game with an upper body injury, which was the first game he missed all year, which is why my understanding is they quite probably would have gone to Mika Zibanejad to replace him, but Zib, I think, already had plans in Sweden, which is why they ended up going to Kreider, and the argument was they could have actually asked Tony DeAngelo based on his numbers. But nice that Kreider gets it. And if the Rangers kind of boosts his trade stock, if you believe in that stuff a little bit. But, Zib probably would have been the replacement. But Panarin did miss the game with an injury, so he's not going to be suspended or miss a game. And he gets, because of the way the schedule works out, 9 days to rest now by the time New York starts up again, which is the 31st.
There's a little bit of breaking news I want to get Kevin's feedback on. The San Jose Sharks owner, Hasso Plattner, came out a couple hours ago. I guess they were announcing a new team president and addressed the Doug Wilson's status as general manager. He says, while we are all very disappointed in the team's performance thus far this season, Doug has a long history of leading our team to success. The last time we failed to meet our winning standards in the 2014-15 season, we were able to quickly rebound and reestablish a winning culture for the next several years. I am supportive of Doug's plan to get our team back on track. Kev, the one thing I always have learned about any kind of vote of confidence, it soon follows a firing.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case here, though.
I don't think it is either, and I don't think it's usually the case in hockey. That you're absolutely right in other sports, but in hockey, that sounds like a very sincere. And to be honest, just to give a little background, and it's not true anymore, but in the early years, Wilson kept his team highly competitive, and he didn't go to the cap. Like he left a few $1 million on the table, and ownership was always appreciative of the fact that he could maintain a high competitiveness, and not have to push the limits of ownership. So I think there is an appreciation there that extends beyond the one-loss records. But I think we are in a performance business, and the one thing that you hear around the league is something doesn't look right with the Sharks, that they look like they don't care. The statement by Carlson about how it looks like it's over, and we're in January.
Yeah.
I find that there's some issues there. So I think if Doug Wilson has certainly got a vote of confidence, and maybe he deserves it for all the good service he's done to that team through the years. But if I was the owner, I'd be heavily involved in what's happened moving forward, and I'd stick my nose in and get my 2 cents in about changing because it appears the chemistry is not right.
Yeah. No, there's huge issues, and it's frustrating. Although it was somewhat foreseeable. I mean, and it goes beyond. It goes way beyond just Pavelski too. It goes way beyond.
No,
that.
I think it's the Carlson signing. I think that really changed how they were going to play, how they were going to defend, how they were going. So it really changed the whole makeup of that team overnight.
I think it's the fact that they've allocated $26 million on 3 defensemen.
Yep.
All of them either 30 or older, which means that they're probably at their peak or just starting their decline. And, good luck trying to move Marc-Edouard Vlasic if that was your intent. If he starts to decline, I don't think anybody in the NHL is going to take a very good defensive defenseman and a guy who was an all-star level defenseman as he approaches his early to mid 30s, making $7 million a year. That's a tough nut to crack.
But I think
this
I think the bigger issue is the play and goal, right? Because if Jones was playing better and they've had to turn to Aaron Dell, if Jones was playing better, we likely wouldn't be having this discussion because the team overall would have a much better record. But Jones has been pretty horrific this year. Right. Them losing Couture now hasn't helped matters in terms of offensively. And I think the argument though also is as decent, and I'll use the term decent, as Erik Karlsson has played, he surely hasn't looked like the Erik Karlsson from 2 years ago that they thought they were getting when they got him in a trade.
No, definitely not. Although people in Ottawa felt like this is where Erik Karlsson was heading when he got him in the trade. But this billboard went up in Edmonton, which I thought was pretty funny. It's called, if you can't read, it's hard to read, but it says the Matthew Tkachuk Friendship Tour coming coming to Edmonton and coming back. So this is obviously, I like do we have like something going on between Calgary and Edmonton again in general, but that this is like, I'll give creativity to them out there.
It's nice that he has money to waste on that.
Yeah, was it Zach Cassian that bought the billboard?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but all right. So right now we're at the point, and should we discuss the awards, which have been?
Yeah, I'd like to. I'll start it out.
All right.
The
halfway awards have been announced. So
yeah, I have them up if you want me to.
Yeah, I'm up to. But Kevin, go ahead. Why don't you start with?
Well, I was just going to say, just give a little history. The writers now do mid-season awards, which is kind of a fun thing. It gives people a barometer for what might happen as we move forward. And the one that struck me is GM of the Year. My personal favorite, John Chaika, for that award, second, and he lost out to Joe Sakic. And my argument for Chaika is that he's just that's not easy, trying to build a winner in Arizona, as we all know from the history of what's gone on there. And he's done a really fine job and done it in a way that most GMs say is difficult. And by that is he's been a horse trader.
Yeah.
He's made a lot of trades, a lot of them minor, but he's made some big ones too. And, including bringing in people like Phil Kessel. And, not everyone has been a home run, but, he's made enough of them and thought outside a box enough to create a team that's, keeps the puck out of their net and gets just enough, and barely, but just enough goals. And he believed in Darcy Kemper, and Kemper has proven that he kind of knows goaltending. At least he guessed right on Kemper. And I just give him high marks for what he's done. He was a gimmick when he came aboard because he was the youngest GM in professional sports, but he's not a gimmick anymore. He's done a really nice job there, and I would give it to him. I see no problem with Joe Sakic, being there at the top, but I would have probably gone the other way with Chaika.
It's a tough vote, Kev. I mean, I had Sakic second. I had Doug Armstrong first, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah,
because he's got that team in position to possibly repeat now, where that's become a nearly impossible thing, even for the Blackhawks. And he made one of the best moves in the offseason with Justin Falk. So I got to hand it to him. Now, Sakic's on my list, but then I also had Jim Rutherford, because it's like, all right, look, we're all extolling the virtues of the Penguins. We wouldn't be talking about the Penguins without signing John Marino and some of those other things they did, and Jim Rutherford did that. So it's a tough vote, I think.
Yeah, I would also give him a little merit based upon the Kessel-Galchenyuk trade, right? I mean, Galchenyuk has been nothing worse than horrible in Pittsburgh, right? That's why Chaika's got to get some credit there. In the Hall trade, I think we all think that the return that New Jersey got, to a certain extent, was underwhelming. Well, which is probably what may have cost. I mean, regardless of what Brooks wrote, Shiro may have lost his job partly based upon the way that was managed, and especially how early it worked. And all the moves that Shiro made this offseason clearly didn't pan out. I mean, look at Subban has been a bust, for lack of a better term, right now in New Jersey. And and everything we thought they quote unquote won the offseason, and they haven't. So Chaika's done a great job getting Kessel for not much and Hall for not much. You mentioned Kemper coming back. Durante, you can talk about whether or not the signing worked out, but Dvorak has started to play well. Yeah. Keller started to play well. You look at defensively with getting Goligoski a couple of years ago. So overall, he's built a pretty good team based upon what he started with in that organization. On
top of the Marino acquisition, you have to, with Rutherford, you have to talk about the Marcus Pettersson for Daniel Sprong deal, because Pettersson is one of their better defensemen. He's like, 23 years old. It's tough to get a quality defenseman that young for basically a prospect that right now hasn't panned out in Sprong. So that's a great deal.
Did anyone consider Jarmo Kukalainen for this? Because honestly, I think he's done a phenomenal job. Honestly, he's done an incredible job.
I think that's more Tortorella.
That's a more Tortorella thing.
Yeah, what did he do from last season to this season? That's a one-season award.
Right.
But it's what he hasn't. In some of these cases, it's what you haven't done. In that definitely. Is in Sakic's case, I think that's what he hasn't done.
I think that's Tortorella. I think Tortorella's got to get Coach of the Year consideration based upon what's happened with that team.
That was the one that shocked me when I sort of saw that in my email, and I voted Tortorella first, and I gulped hard, but I had to give it to the guy who deserved it. I was shocked that John Tortorella wasn't the first guy. I was thinking.
I
How
had
could
him one
he not
too.
be?
Is that reputation based?
Yeah.
Well, Mike Sullivan, all the injuries in Pittsburgh, I think that's
No. I mean, like, I don't want to besmirch Sullivan. He does a tremendous
No,
job there.
Sullivan does a fine job, but
But I just think Tortorella, when you look at that, Columbus team, like he's got them, when they lost Corpusalo, everybody said, "Oh boy,"
Right.
because Elvis, now,
been a beast.
now
Elvis is Kukalainen. I mean, that's a Kukalainen.
Well, but we're talking about Kekalainen. He drafted Gavrikov. He signed Elvis was a draft pick. They brought in all these young guys and they're playing them. But why are they playing them? Because he traded tons of draft picks. He
had these guys coming in, Mike. That's
right.
We had this discussion before. I
well,
mean,
Columbus. I'll give
I don't have a problem giving it to Sullivan.
High mark, but Yarmo, in this case, when we talk about the GM award, it's not about guys who were drafted.
Yeah.
It's more about guys who were traded,
Right?
Who were not traded.
but that's why making those deals turned out very well for them, and to me, like the whole thing plays out. I mean, a GM of a half of a year is ridiculous. A GM of 1 year is ridiculous. Like a GM is a 3-year, 5-year thing, right? I mean, you're looking at what to get to. I mean, unless you made a big trade right now in this season, which is where you can actually hike. John bringing in Kessel, making the moves he's made there. Yeah, he's done a lot this season. Rutherford, I get that. Obviously, Falk was a great pickup. But it's really hard to give a GM of half of a year. I mean, that's like.
I think you got to pay homage to what we're attempting to do.
Yeah, I get it.
Like Kekalainen, and like he's done a really nice job in Columbus. Like I think we all recognize that. But just in terms of the changes in this from last year to this year, I think the people that we've mentioned. Have just done a better job. That doesn't mean that Kekalainen hasn't done a great job. He has, but we all have our personal favorites.
I'm not doing it because of any personal favorites in this case. I just think the changes from last year, this year, there's a lot of changes, and those are players that left that he had to replace, and the only way he can replace those players is by having drafted players over the years to replace them. And that's. To me, that's a long-term thing that has shown where they are at this point. And you can say
I don't think anybody here would argue that.
No, I'm just saying. I think that it's not mentioned enough. And I get Tortorella's done a great job, but he also has to have the players too. I mean, these players are. I don't know. It's always a chicken and egg thing.
Right? I think we should come up with a scouting department award. I'd be more than happy to give a vote for that too.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Vezina. Okay, so the Vezina right now, the writers are saying Connor Hellebuck of the Jets, with Ben Bishop as second and Darcy Kemper third. Mm-hmm. Any opinions on that?
Well, I think Hellebuck, everyone looks at is where in the world would the Jets be given their loss of their defense without Hellebuck? I think that's why he's where he is. I think it has everything to do with the fact that they wouldn't even, and they're not in it, not in the playoffs, but they wouldn't even be close without him. I think that's the rationale for that. Like he has just been so dramatic in terms of his ability to keep them competitive.
Yeah, Hellebuck was my third for the reasons Kev just said. Jordan Bennington was my second because everybody thought he was a fluke last year, and he's followed it up this year with a great season, and that's part of the reason they're still the team that they are. And then my top one is Andre Vasilevsky because if you want to talk about a team that was down and out and couldn't win or do anything, if he wasn't the goalie, their season would be over already. Bishop, unfortunately, comes in fourth with me because he has a good team.
Yeah,
and he also has a good backup that takes the pressure off of him. If you look with Hudobin,
and I love Ben Bishop.
Well, what I'm shocked at is that Tristan Jarry.
That's my pick right there, Mike. Yep.
I mean, Tristan Jarry
is my pick, right? Clear, like what you're saying about Hellebuck with Pittsburgh, just double that with Winnipeg, just double that with.
If I'm going to take one from each conference. How about going 15-8-4 with a team that can't play defense and having a .922 save percentage? Your favorite Robin Lehner.
I know. Robin Lehner.
In the mix. I think you've named the 5 that are probably going to be in there this year.
Well, the only problem is what happens to the backup, right? So Corey Crawford has started to play slightly better. How much time does he take away from Lehner, right?
I don't think
Matt Murray's played a little bit better. He may start eating away at some time at Jarry. Hellebuck is limped into the break. partially potentially due to the workload that he's had.
Well,
and Broussard hasn't been particularly great lately behind him either. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how this filters out over the next 30 games, because the guys who were starters or became backups may get the opportunity.
Vasilevsky's backup.
Let me play
He's
devil's advocate.
finally played well.
Let Kev go. Yeah.
Let me play devil's advocate with just Russ's pick of Vasilevsky, just because I think it's kind of funny. Can we make a case that the reason why Tampa Bay got off to such a horrendous start, or a primary reason, was that Vasilevsky didn't play nearly as well?
See, I didn't think it was. I didn't.
Let me throw this out, because I remember doing a story in late November or early December where I talked to Cooper about it, and he pointed out that when they look at the statistics, the scoring chances, they were actually did a better job on scoring chances than they did last year. But he said Vasilevsky, who was unbelievable last season, I mean, really unbelievable.
Yeah, truly.
Just hadn't made as many. And, he didn't blame Vasilevsky. He just said, he's just been kind of unlucky. So, I think there is something to that had Vasilevsky been, better in that first half, they probably wouldn't look nearly as bad as they.
I'll just say this: he's 24-9-2 with a 9.17. If he played bad, he didn't play it for long.
Well, yeah. If you think that the Rangers goaltending scenario is complex, the two that we just mentioned, Leonard and Crawford are both UFA at the end of the year.
Right.
According to what the reports, Bowman is trying to get one of them signed, so possibly he could trade the other by the deadline. In Pittsburgh, Jarry
definitely Leonard. He's definitely trying to sign Leonard.
Yeah,
that's what I hear too.
He's 28 and Crawford's 35, and Crawford's had injury problems. So you're probably right. The other one, both Jarry and Murray are RFA at the end of the year. Murray's won 2 Stanley Cups, so you can't sneeze at that. But Jarry has played great this year. I think you can get a ton for either one of them in a trade in the offseason. And God knows there's enough teams out there that need starting goaltenders. So I'd like to be in Rutherford's position with those guys.
Yeah, I'd urge caution a little bit on, the Penguin fan base has got their mind made up about what should happen. I'd like to remind everyone that they were thinking about trading Jerry at the start of this year.
Yeah. like second-year goalies.
I know how well he's played. Like, he really has been unbelievable. Yeah. But I just think everybody calm down and let's see where we're at the end of the season. And
if Jim Rutherford puts Matt Murray on the trade deadline, I know somebody who used to be the GM of Matt Murray in junior who would definitely love to trade for him.
Yeah, I don't see them putting Matt Murray up for sure.
I don't think so.
I mean, you got a young goalie. You got to give, he's got to go through the league a couple times, and people are going to figure out how to beat him, and he's going to have to figure out how to stop that. There's a whole process that goes on with young goalies, and I've loved the scouter told me that one time. The whole thing about goaltending in the NHL is it's such a good league that they will find your weakness. So you might be able to be good for a while, but they will find your weakness, and unless you overcome that weakness, you're done. And that's the case.
Now, the problem is that sometimes 5 is not enough goalies to have. And 2 is too many, except when expansion is coming.
Right.
Then everything is problematic. So.
Right, everything is problematic. I agree. All right, so now the Calder Trophy.
This in the Norris was a complete no-brainers. If anybody voted for anybody other than Carlson and Makar, they should have their ballot taken away, like the guy who didn't vote for.
They did. I saw votes online. They did.
Hughes is going to get a lot of play for the Calder.
Yeah,
and rightfully so.
He's second on my list, and he has come up strong. And if Vancouver stays strong, because of the little bit of time Makar missed, that could be an issue. And I've got Kubelik third. Like Kubelik, I know he's a winger and he's playing with good players, but he's still scoring goals.
20 goals.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, all those guys are worthy, but no one's had a greater impact than Makar.
Right.
So he was born to play with that crew in Colorado.
Yeah.
Carlson's obviously the Norris Trophy. The more interesting thing about the Norris is who could come in second. I mean, that's honestly the battle right there, because Carlson's got that almost wrapped up as long as he's.
I had Roman Josi. I think a fair amount of people probably did.
Yeah, he's who they vote. It was Josi and then Hamilton is third, which is I feel good for Dougie Hamilton for that. He did a lot.
You know who my third one was? I didn't have Hamilton, maybe because I felt like now with the injury, he's going to possibly fade in that category. I had Keith Yandel, and I'll tell you why. That team we look at that team, and where would they be without Yandel and his 31 assists and never missing a game?
Yep.
No, Yandel's had an
and Ekblad has started to play a lot better there also comparatively as well. So if Bobrovsky is back to being his, Mike, if Toronto doesn't figure out their goaltending, Florida's going to make a run at that division. Given how hot they've been, Florida's going to make a major run. They're 9 points back, and they're on fire right now.
Yeah, but the question is, will they stay on fire? I mean,
I see no reason why Barkov and with Archiari doing what he's doing and Huberdeau and Trocheck has woken up the last 2-3 weeks.
There's a goalie that could play better. It's Bob, and Bob probably will play better.
Yeah, and Frederick Anderson's save percentage in January is under 900. So if you think that's going to continue, then the Leafs won't make the playoffs. I think he'll be back to his usual 915 to 917, which is what he ends up with at the end of the year, and then it'll be a nip and tuck battle for the last 2 months for them to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I have folded up the Panthers and put them in a box, and I'm not going to look at them again till April and then try to figure out what they are because I have no read on them. They still feel like patchwork to me.
Right.
I love what Dale Talon did and to try to improve that, but I think they're a very difficult read. I don't think we'll know that team's identity until they get in the playoffs and we see what they can do.
I think you're right.
I just don't know whether. Like I said, I like what he did. I just don't know if it's right. Like it doesn't seem like there's any consistency there.
But Kev, how many teams can we say that about? I mean, Toronto is a basket case right now. We don't know what.
Yeah, but we can identify Toronto's issue. It's been the same issue for a long time. I'm not sure we know what Florida's issue is. I watched them, and they scored a lot of goals. And then I watched some other nights, and I thought, boy, with Yandel and Ekblad and that defense, it's okay. And then Bobrovsky plays well, and then I say, well, all right. Well, then he doesn't play well. I go, well.
I'll tell you the one, Kev, after Schwartz that I had the biggest problem with, that I had to rub my eyes. Mike, read who the comeback player of the year award is.
Yes, it was somebody named William Nylander.
Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Well, look at his production last year. That's kind of probably why.
But
he caused that?
Whose fault was it?
All right.
William Nylander.
Depends on how you're defining the term comeback player.
Well, that comeback.
No, you're absolutely right. That's how you define it.
Well, all right.
Yeah, by how terrible they were last year, basically.
If it's coming back,
who do you have? Russ, who do you have?
Wait, if it's
Justin Hall, because last year, Mike can tell you, where was Justin Hall last year, Mike?
Sitting in the press box next to me for 71 games.
That's more of a comeback than William Nylander.
Yeah, I mean.
That's quite across the bear.
Sitting next to Mike or
yeah, 71 games.
Yes, just leave it there, Kevin. Just yes. That's why he got out of the press box. Didn't have to sit next to him anymore.
You got sick of me, Jan.
I mean, I like Anthony Duclair in there too.
I think Duclair should be the guy who probably is the favorite in my opinion.
I've always been a Duclair fan, but again, the thing about Duclair is that he does excel in situations like he's in now that don't matter. So that's the tough thing about that. I would love to see Anthony Duclair on. If he was on a good team, would he also do this, or can he just be like Ryan Dzingel was on the Ottawa Senators last year? Like a put up numbers on a team that doesn't matter because they don't have any.
But Dzingel ended up going with a team where he's on the third line now, right? If he was back in a top 6 role, maybe he would be producing. But in Carolina, he did the same thing about Eric Haula, who was hot. Now he rode the press box the other night.
But and when you get on a team like Dzingel didn't do anything in the playoffs for Columbus, it's just certain things he goes even he's scratched some nights. Even it's just Duclair as people have believed in Duclair before because he shows hints of greatness, but he doesn't. He has these moments, they're kind of crazy. The Rod Langway Award, which is the best defensive defenseman. Roman Josi also came in third, so he came in third for this one and second for the Norris. I wonder if we'll ever see someone win both of those. That would be interesting.
Yeah, you shouldn't. You really shouldn't.
They're designed not to, right? It's the whole concept of it is that we're never going to have that.
I agree,
but it could happen. I mean, why wouldn't the best defenseman be also the best defensive defenseman? No. It's
my number one was Colton Parayko. I just feel like this guy needs to get his due. I have actually Zdeno Chara second. Because if you think about that team and all the problems that they had with injuries and stuff, he's been really solid too.
Well, it's interesting with Parayko because I think a lot of us thought he would step up more offensively over the last 2 years, and with Pete D'Angelo playing so well and Vince Dunn actually providing some offense, he's been able to settle back more into that almost Boomeister role where he's become just a really tough defensive guy to go against. Once once Shattenkirk moved, right, everybody thought Parayko was going to step into that role. He's been obviously much more comfortable in a defensive type role.
Yeah.
I like the Slavin choice just for this reason. The award was created for the idea to grab the overlooked guy or the guy that everyone appreciates but knows he can't ever win the Norris. And I think that is Slavin to a T.
It's true.
He's just such a excellent player who impacts every game, rarely has a poor game, frequently has an A or an A+ game. So I'm fine with that choice, but I like all of the choices that you guys have mentioned.
And he's
worthy.
My only concern with Slavin now is with Hamilton out, does he try to do too much, adversely impacting his game?
That's fair. That's a fair question.
The name here that I think that just totally got overlooked, and who I think just from the eye test, watching night after night of different games, the guy that I just always think is the best defenseman on the ice is Charlie McAvoy. Like I love watching the kid play, and I think defensively he is just ridiculous. Like he is always in the right position. He's steering, he's guiding people around, on the ice. He's giving and just part of that whole Boston machine. I know, but he's very underrated for what he does.
Right, but I think early in the season there was some criticism early on of McAvoy's defense when their defense was a little bit askew, and I think that's the reason.
Yeah, and I would throw this out. I think he'll change over time because he's just such a young player still. But he is a bit of a risk taker. Like when you watch him, and he's a risk taker. He's so confident.
Right.
Like it doesn't feel like a risk to him.
There's a reason they play him with Chara.
Get back.
Yeah. So ultimately he'll be a guy that could be in the Norris. But I think right now I'm not sure I'm as comfortable with him as a Langway.
I mean, I know he doesn't have any goals, and everyone's like ripping on him because he doesn't have any goals, right? McAvoy, and he should have goals by this point in the season. But
it doesn't matter. What is it?
Watching him play, like I know, and Bill C's saying, "Haha, you can tell Ek doesn't watch the Bruins." That's absolutely not true. Bill is one of my favorite teams to watch. I do watch the Bruins, and I really do enjoy watching McAvoy just for the little things he does. His outlet passes, his position. I think the guy, he just plays the right kind of game, and he's crazy, confident. He reminds me of like a Pronger. That's what I've always seen him as. Yeah,
he doesn't entertain the possibility of pilot air. Like he really plays as if he believes he's infallible.
Yeah,
and which is good. Like I love the guy too. But I just think right now, he does take risk. If you watch him, that leave Chara to hold the bag, but nobody holds the bag better than Chara.
I will tell you this:
he knows who's back there. He knows who he's playing with.
I will tell you this, off of this subject just for a second, but because you had mentioned that, Kevin, with the confidence and everything, if you look at what Quinn Hughes is doing, he's quietly changing that position. The passing that he does, if you actually watch the stretch passings that he is doing, shift after shift after shift with great accuracy, is almost better than anybody in the league, veterans included.
Yeah. Speaking of Quinn Hughes, if we got a minute here, and I think I'm actually going to write about this this week, but I've never felt it was fair to criticize a team for not drafting a guy, because it's easy to go back and look and say, look, you should have taken him. Your guy was a bum. Right. And that's just too easy. That the draft is too hard and that thing. So I never go there. However, I'm going to make an exception on Quinn Hughes, and this is why. I think that one of the reasons why the Red Wings are even in a greater mess that Steve Yzerman has to clean up is because the Red Wings didn't take Quinn Hughes at 6.
Yeah,
look how their life would have changed had they done that. Their biggest problem right now is they've got some forwards that are interesting. They've got Bertuzzi, they've got Dylan Larkin, they've got Mantha. Looks like this Giovanni Smith will play in the league. He's got some toughness, and you might score a few goals. Their defense is a mess. They've got Sider, who definitely is going to be a top pairing defenseman, and it looks like Hronek will be able to play. But imagine that defense if the Red Wings would have not taken Sedina and took Quinn Hughes, who would be playing in the league right now. And then they'd have Quinn Hughes playing with Sider, and Hronek would be on the second pairing. Now, the reason why I blame them is because at that draft, their whole discussion was about taking a young defenseman. They wanted Bouchard. They didn't get him. He was gone.
Right.
Instead of sticking with it, even though Quinn Hughes was rated right in that area, they got caught up in the lure of Zadina, and they did not take. And here's the other reason why I think you hold them accountable. He was playing at the University of Michigan.
Right. They know him.
They knew everything about Quinn Hughes.
Was it a case of that he's too close to home almost?
Maybe. So I just think that's an exception that I make, because normally I would not blame a team. But I do think, the Eisman has every reason to wonder what the heck they were doing when they didn't take Quinn Hughes.
I mean, Russ and Kevin, we were all at that draft, and we all remember that Zadina. I mean, he was projected to go top 3.
Correct.
Everybody was surprised that he slipped past Montreal when they took Kotkaniemi. And the surprising thing is they took Zadina over Hughes and Bouchard. Bouchard didn't go till 10.
I had Zadina ranked 3rd. I had Hughes ranked 7th. I had Noah Dobson ranked 6th.
Right.
And I still think Noah Dobson's going to be unbelievable. So,
play it forward, Kevin. Let's presume they take Hughes over Zadina. Does Detroit double down and take Seider, or did they take Seider higher than everybody expected them to take because they realized the mistake that they made with Hughes?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer that question by saying yes, they would have taken Seider because the management had changed.
Okay.
And that Seider was an Yzerman pick.
Yep.
So Seider, I don't think Yzerman cared about the position. I think he thought Seider was an impact player, and I think they would have taken him. So that's my take on that.
I will say this: Quinn Hughes is in my upcoming book, Sticks and Stones About College Hockey, coming out April 7th. Thank you.
Plug, baby.
This plug brought to you by.
I don't sponsor any soft drink. But,
no, I'm just having some water right now.
7-Eleven logo.
Yeah. Let's see what else we got here before we get out of here.
Well, let me just ask this quick question around the horn. I was talking to someone from the Hockey News on the radio show that I do this morning, and I asked the person whether they thought that the lack of sellers, and we're a month away from the trade deadline, but right now I would say at the most you have 7 to 8 teams that are sellers. Whether that will be the bigger concern in terms of the trade market, or the fact that very few teams have cap space. What's going to be the bigger impact factor at the trade deadline? I personally think it's going to be the lack of cap space.
Well, don't forget, you can trade cap space technically by assuming 50% of a contract. So there's ways around that issue.
I think it's definitely the sellers thing, because I honestly think that's really and the reality that a lot of teams aren't willing to throw in the towel in the season, because there feels as if I've talked to people especially last week, it feels pretty wide open. Like even for teams that are on the bubble, that's why I brought up yesterday, like what bubble team could possibly still win the Stanley Cup? There's teams out there that aren't in the playoffs right now that still think they have a shot at winning the Stanley Cup. So there's no one that's, everyone knows Boston's great. Everyone knows St. Louis is great. Yeah. But people do believe that both those teams are beatable.
Well, to that point, I want to ask you this, Kevin. Buffalo, with Florida and Columbus winning, Buffalo is 10 points out of third place in the Atlantic and 10 points out of the wild card. And at this point, Botterill is not selling. Now, they've got 9 of their next 10 games at home. And after that streak, there's a week to go before the trade deadline. I think he's got to make a determination about midway through that. Am I selling, or am I staying the course? And if I'm the Sabres, I'm saying I'm selling. I'm trading Sheary and Gergensons and Bogosian and anybody who's not nailed down.
Yeah, I think the record will dictate that once they get going.
It's still hard for Buffalo to admit that yet. It's just they had a great start. They keep wanting to be not the team that's selling. We do have to get going, but I wanted to throw this out. My crazy stat here that I have here, which for today is that every team in the Western Conference, with the exception of the Blues and the Avalanche, would be 7th or lower were they in the Metro Division. Think about that. That's how good the Metro Division is right now.
There, guys.
So only, St. Louis and Colorado would be higher than 7th in the Metro. It's nuts.
Wow.
That's a nuts stat. I think that's really just, we haven't seen a division kind of that dominant in a very long time. That's just.
I think the most crazy thing right now is the Pacific Division, where you have 5 teams within a point.
Yeah. That's very true too. And the other thing that just blows my freaking mind is, am I really going to be writing more Ilya Kovalchuk rumors? Is that really possible?
Yes. Yes. And
I can't do it.
I told you Mark Bergevin was smart to make that signing before he made it because it was a no-lose situation.
Yeah, you did say that.
Round pick for.
No, you said that, and I just didn't think Kovalchuk would be good enough to possibly make.
He's going to get a draft. He's more attractive now because he's making $700K and he's proved that he can score.
I know, but he definitely is right at the top of the trade rumor Hall of Fame. Anyway, he's got to be there aren't many players.
Well, I mean, Mike Sillinger would have been had you been around.
Thomas Caberlet.
I did a lot of Sillinger rumors. I did.
I know, but you could have done more.
Thomas Caberlet. Caberlet.
Caberlet, Matt Sundin. I mean, there's certain players for players who never got moved. Matt Sundin was
Yeah, don't get me started.
But the thing about Kovalchuk is he has been on so many different teams. There have been in so many weird circumstances, so many odd situations too. Not just is he going to get traded, but he's retired. He's he's left the country. He's it's just crazy stuff. Signed the biggest. I mean, oh my gosh, the rumor that the trade that Kevin broke, he's gone, but Kevin broke the Atlanta to New Jersey trade. I mean, so many things with Kovalchuk that I cannot imagine if there's going to be another guy. Man, it was funny. My friend in Detroit sent this to me because I was saying I think Detroit's pretty close, and one of my friends in Detroit said they're not close at all. And his funny text that he sent to me is he said they're 5 years away from being 5 years away. That's great. Detroit's 5 years away from being 5 years away. I said, it's not that bad. Come on,
even if they win the lottery and draft Lafreniere, they're 3 years away from making the playoffs at least.
Okay, I'll give 3 years from making the playoffs. That's fine. I mean, that's everyone is basically 3 years from making the playoffs, right? I mean, we can sit and say that in the
NHL, Flyers in that. Okay, that's good. I'm just making sure.
Oh yeah, I'll put the Flyers in there for sure.
All right.
Especially Pretty, who is not going to get sued apparently for punching this kid, but that's another rumor. We can follow that if you want to follow that. It's the Flyers have determined that the whole thing is a scam.
Yeah, you're going to start a new website, Mascot Buzz.
Oh yes. Gritty just the marketing keeps going for Gritty.
It does.
Have a good weekend, but don't say that till tomorrow. Buzz, folks, it is just hockey, and we will talk to you.